So I've already made a couple videos about this topic on the channel already, but considering we get like an update nearly every single day on Harley Reid, I just felt like I gotta come over here now and we'll make another video on it, because there is a lot of really interesting things going around right now, with not only Harley Reid potentially requesting a trade from the West Coast Eagles, but obviously the Richmond Football Club yet again showing a ton of interest in trying to get him. Again, it just started off as little rumors here and there, and then it's really led on to big things like, of course, the thing I think that started it all was actually Cameron Hicks's tweet. Now, for those of you who don't know who Cameron Hicks are, again, if you're a Richmond fan, I highly recommend looking into this guy, because he basically makes magic with his fingers. Again, if he was put in a room with Kim Kardashian and all he had the ability was to use his fingers with his magic, Kim Kardashian would somehow be pregnant with 8 kids. I don't know. You guys get what I'm trying to say here. He's got magic fingers on the keyboard and he says some good shit. For example, he can confirm that the Tigers are very interested in the Harley Reid chase. There's a very large price tag on him, which is my only concern. I'd be all aboard Harley jumping ship if he's attainable for the right price. Think he's just checked out and probably hasn't handled it the right way since he's a kid. He will show everyone the talent he has no matter where he goes in Victoria. Again, Cameron Hicks is also the guy that predicted Sam Lawler and Jonty Fall both going to Richmond, saying they were interested in him months and months before, of course, that even happened. So Cameron Hicks was the first one, and then Callum Toomey got word of this and, of course, reported on the fact that we are interested in him. Again, he actually goes on to say as well that Richmond is keen. They have two top 5 picks and they are pursuing him. Again, all of that was being said, then of course Matthew Lloyd came out and said, if you've got players who don't want to be at your club, no matter how good they are, you move them on for the culture of the West Coast Eagles. So I think it's very, very obvious to say that right now Harley Reid is probably not going to be on the West Coast Eagles next season. Again, it's such a highly weird situation. He seemed so happy last year and was playing some absolutely insane football, and then this year he's kind of booty cheeks and doesn't look like he wants to be there at all. Again, I think it will become very more obvious when it gets revealed that he's meeting with the club. Again, I don't know what club is going to be that who he's met with. Personally, I believe he's basically already met with Hawthorn. I mean, obviously, Tom Barras sitting Sam Mitchell next to him at the wedding could have been a very, just minor and casual thing. But at the end of the day, Sam Mitchell is the coach of the Hawthorn Football Club. And we all know that as humans, if you're sitting there next to a guy that you would obviously love on your team, you're going to be like, hey, mate, so what are your thoughts about, playing for my team next year? Kind of joking, but obviously having some serious intent. Again, I wouldn't be surprised if that escalated to a meeting or something where they actually talked it over and got the level of interest that Harley Reid, of course, does have in them. Again, there's a ton of other teams as well. I think Geelong, they're definitely going to meet with him. I think it was said by Callum Toomey as well that he believes Geelong and Hawthorn are the favourites. And Geelong was a little bit left field to me, and some people said it's because he went for Geelong as a kid. Again, going for a team as a kid really doesn't mean a whole lot at all. I mean, 2 instances to prove this is Tom Lynch was a massive Collingwood fan as a kid. He had the opportunity to pick between Collingwood and Richmond. He picked Richmond. Also, Tom Green was a massive Richmond fan his whole entire life. Again, his grandfather played for Richmond. He literally was in the GWS Academy, I think, since 16. And he knew he was going to get drafted to the Giants. And 2 months before he got drafted, I think he went to the Richmond vs. Giants grand final and was wearing Richmond stuff. Again, he still ended up re-signing with GWS for a very long time. And as we know, there's like a 0.01% chance he ever leaves them at this point. So going for the team doesn't really mean anything. But some people have mentioned Geelong just because of the lifestyle they can provide, and it could be very similar to the more country lifestyle, and the closest to the country lifestyle he probably got up in the Bendigo area. Again, you look at Essendon are the one that a lot of people think he might go to because they'll be the one that offers up the most amount of money. They also desperately just need to make moves, and I think we are going to probably see a desperate free agency and trade period for Essendon because their young core hasn't probably built to what they want it to be. They actually haven't even traded that bad. I think they've actually brought in some good players along the lines as well. So I think they're going to go for Harley Reid. I think they'll offer him probably the most. They'll also have the 2 top 6 or top 8 picks from their own pick and Melbourne's pick. So they'll be in the race. And then obviously Richmond. Again, if I had to say who Harley Reid would personally want to go to, and I'm not saying this because I'm a Richmond fan. I mean, I don't think I've really ever been biased on this channel at all. But if we're going to look at it with a ton of different things, such as Richmond probably have the most money to offer. Richmond are an extremely good young core with a lot of great veterans and got a lot of good players in their prime still that can develop him 10 times more than West Coast have. They also are arguably the biggest and most supported club in the game. They, again, also have just come off 3 premierships and have a ton of recent success. So if you combine all of those things into one, I would personally think that Harley Reid, the most obvious situation for him to be would be to go to Richmond. I just think getting to Richmond, though, for him is going to be a little bit tricky, especially when West Coast are, I think personally, going to become very, very greedy if they get into a trade negotiation with Richmond. Look, they have every single right to be, don't get me wrong, but right now Richmond have something that no club has really ever had naturally, and that is two top 3 picks. And again, what I mean naturally is anytime a club has another top 3 pick, it is because they got that pick from the AFL. The AFL has given it to them pretty much by compensation, a priority pick, whatever it might be. It has happened for years and years. Gold Coast have had a ton of them. It's just how it's always been. But Richmond actually got this other top 3 pick by trading for it, by pretty much making North Melbourne look extra dumb and giving them their first round pick. Again, at the time making this video, Richmond have 2 and of course 3, which is highly interesting because that is a massive draft haul. And with how good Richmond have been drafting, they are expecting probably to draft 2 stars with that pick. The only issue is, though, is that they're going to want Harley Reid, and Harley Reid's probably going to want to go to them. And I think that's not going to work because West Coast are going to not only demand 2 and 3, but they're probably going to demand more. And if West Coast said to me, look, we'll give you Harley Reid, but we want 2 and 3, if I'm Richmond, I'm not doing it. And there are a lot of reasons I'm not doing it. First of all, Harley Reid, even though he had a great first season, we're going to remember he's a 20-year-old kid who is super unproven, right? And I just want to preface by saying West Coast probably should be asking for 2 and 3. But if I was Richmond, I wouldn't do it. Harley Reid is unproven, and with how good they've been as a drafting team over the history of the last 15 years in the AFL, you should be backing yourself in to maybe not draft someone who's going to be better than Harley Reid, but you're going to draft 2 guys who will hopefully be maybe as good, right? Maybe just even a little bit less. And if you can do that, if you can walk out of this draft with a couple of elite young players over Harley Reid, who's had a lot of issues and whatnot, that would be a very great thing. And I think that's what Richmond should do. But in saying that, if West Coast were to be nice and reasonable and said to Richmond, we want your pick 3 and we want your future first round pick, I would do that if I was Richmond. And the reason I would do that, and that trade makes a lot more sense to me, is because as we know, I think every year for Richmond right now, for the next, at least this year, and maybe even next year if they can find their way back into it, they should be drafting a top 5 player. Again, they did it last year basically twice with Lawler and Smiley. Smiley would have gone top 5 in any other draft class, and he was projected 1 literally a couple months before the draft started. They could do it this year 2 times. But basically, if you bring in Harley Reid and you keep that other, top 5 pick, you've just basically got Harley Reid, who was the top 5 from, 2 years ago, and now a new top 5. So I think it makes a lot more sense in the timeline and time frame that Richmond are in. And also, if Richmond do attack this free agency heavily, like I think they probably will, and hopefully they bring in a player or two, right? That future first round pick might only be like pick 8. And if you ask me, pick 3 and 8 for Harley Reid is a worthwhile deal, right? I think that's just a worthwhile deal, especially what Harley Reid's going to be. But, pick 2 and 3 or whatever, I just think that's too much. It is too much for Harley Reid. And they're probably going to want even something else. So I wouldn't do that if I was Richmond. If I was Richmond, I'd trade for Harley Reid, give them a top, 3 pick, one of them, and then give you a future first. And then, of course, just rely on you guys signing a couple more free agents this year and being a little bit better next year. Again, let's just say they brought in Harley Reid, that top 5 pick, a player very similar to Harry Perryman, how his contract was. Again, not a half-back. I mean, just maybe a wing or something. I don't really know. But a player who's similar to his level and status in the league and how much Collingwood paid him. A type of player like that. And maybe a young and up-and-coming, 23rd, 24th man who's busting in a team to get into their top, 23. In, of course, a Pat Lipinski when he was at the Western Bulldogs. If you can bring, a Western Bulldogs Pat Lipinski in, a GWS, Harry Perryman type of player, not position-wise, but you guys get what I mean, and a Harley Reid and that top 5 pick, that team, we should go from 17th to hopefully 13th or 14th pretty quick and have, again, a couple more years of development and just watch, I think, it skyrocket over time. So that's how I would do it if I was Richmond. I really don't know how they're going to go about this. I think it's going to be highly interesting to see. And Harley Reid still might not even pick Richmond. Again, it's probably a 20% chance he goes to them. There are 800 other teams who want to have him, and West Coast is still one of them. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Again, I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Do you guys think Richmond should trade for Harley Reid, or do you guys think they shouldn't? Again, I'd like to know. Subscribe to my gaming channel and this channel for all that sports content and news. And I guess I'll be seeing you guys next time. Goodbye.